AI doesn't like failure, but it fails a lot. Terminator Salvation, where I was in the mass moving business. I'm flying in Ospreys, I'm in nuclear subs, 12 IMAX screens across the country that was in over 9,000 theaters. That was the spark. What if I could educate when I'm literally spearheading technology and at the top of my game?
This is Produced With, honest conversations about how great work gets made and the cost of doing it right. If you're a filmmaker, check out Saturation.io, the all-in-one production budgeting, payments, and actualization tool. Well, Shane, so nice to meet you, and I'm so glad to have you on the pod today. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jens. Looking forward to it.
Can you walk us through, maybe how you've seen technical innovation in the last 20 years? There's obviously been a lot of big things that have happened. And one of the ones that come to mind is like the DSLR revolution that you also helped kind of propel. Can you walk us through how you've seen it like in the last like 20 years in terms of like technical innovations in the industry?
You think about back in the day when, a film camera was upgraded like every 10 years, right? You had like the ARRI BL, right? And then it became the ARRI Cam finally, right? And then you had the Panavision Gold that then became the XLT, and all this kind of, progression, but it was like 10 years in the making kind of thing. Now we're having 3-month changes, sometimes 3 weeks. And with that, you are constantly, I find myself creatively and technically on this wheel, which when it was film, the film stock's updated again every 5 to 10 years. There was not a big learning curve. You knew your ratios, you knew how the film stock handled it. You had obviously the digital intermediate, the DI process opened up a whole massive world in, film manipulation, but you still had the pretty much same ratios to deal with, the overs, the unders. You had pull process, you had push process, you had skip bleach, ENR, you had some photochemical manipulation, but when it was all said and done, not a lot. And it did not change for many years. Well, with that, that's creatively exciting actually, because instead of having to learn the latest and greatest in the new technology and where that's going to propel you as a filmmaker, you are able to just push it all onto creative, right? And this is where I saw this was creative science, right? This is how it was filmmaking. And then as the digital revolution started to happen, this started to happen. And that I found also very exciting, because I was constantly frustrated with the size of the cameras, how heavy they were, and with the DSLR revolution, that was my statement to the world saying, I am not in the mass moving business anymore. I am going to grab this small little still camera. I'm going to manipulate it and move it in ways that you've never seen it. I'm going to mount it to helmets. I'm going to put it under cars. I'm going to aim 40 Mike missiles at it. I'm going to, put it in harm's way, knowing that the card will survive and literally obliterate a camera. That thought process was never done before. You didn't sacrifice a $350,000 film camera, right. But sure enough, I sacrificed 25 Canon 5Ds with miniguns and explosions and everything else to put the viewer and immerse the viewer in unique ways. So The DSLR revolution was huge, and that change forced the industry right? And I wanted to just continue to throw gasoline on that because we needed a change. We needed somebody to say, okay, I'm not going to be moving 50, 70, 80, 90-pound cameras anymore. I'm going to have this small device that I can move uniquely. That enabled all of a sudden the gimbal revolution started to happen, right? And with that, all the camera manufacturers all of a sudden started to shrink their cameras.
Right.
After the DSLR revolution, the ARRI, the Alexa Mini came out. The Red, Epic and Dragon was a small box. The Sony Rialto started to, form itself. All these innovations happened because of the DSLR revolution. And then the other thing is we never before could just grab all this amazing still glass that had been laying around on shelves and in photography booths that no one was touching for 20, 30 years. And I started to harvest it. I started to harvest Leica R's, the Leica Jennas, the Nikon AI and AIS series, all these different old, then that started a lens rehousing revolution, right? Where all of a sudden the K35s became huge and the super Baltars were so difficult to work with, but then TCS or TLS went in there and rehoused them. And then all these other manufacturers, instead of doing the zip gears and all the weird iris declicking and all that crap, they were starting to rehouse them in a cinema wrapper. And this started the lens rehousing revolution that then started the anamorphic lens revolution. So if you could say, was there a genesis of the digital revolution, I think it all stems from the DSLR revolution, because without that spark, it would have taken many more years for that to actually cultivate.
Totally agree.
It was so exciting for me because I felt so free as a filmmaker, and coming from Terminator Salvation, where I was in the mass moving business with big film and, helicopters and all the stuff that we needed to do to turn Terminator Salvation, I literally flipped the script where I had a crew of 298 individuals just in camera, grip, and electric. And now I went to Active Valor, where I was the director of photography. I was the camera operator. I was the gaffer, the key grip many times. I was the travel coordinator. So it was like this small 10-person crew was able to make a big blockbuster in the theaters for dime on the dollar what's spent now.
It's crazy to hear from you, especially that kind of like timeline and progression that you've laid out, and I think you articulated that very well. It's also fun speaking about this because the DSLR revolution was how I got into the industry.
How so many people came in.
So many. It just like opened up the floodgates.
Exactly. It was because I was like saying, oh my God, when I put that thing in my hand, I knew it was going to change everyone's lives a person that had a story to tell, but could not invest in the cameras and the film and the processing and the digital to film scan. All that stuff was literally a gate.
Yeah.
I just started to see this democratization of filmmaking where, if you had a story, if you had a creative idea, you now had a camera for $2,500 that you could download right into your laptop. You could make a movie, you could edit it, you could VFX it, you could do everything in your laptop and then punch an HDMI cable into the side of your laptop and put it on a 60-foot screen in a movie theater. And that never was possible.
Wild. And was it Active Valor that was the first one that you used a Canon 5D or DSLR on?
Well, I did some short films along with Active Valor. Active Valor took 2.5 years to complete, right? Because all our Navy SEALs who were our actors kept on getting deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq and everything. So, and the whole concept of that movie was genius, right? It was like we had created amazing relationships through Bandito Brothers with the Navy. And we were doing all these training videos for them. And they said, well, we have this training schedule that we want you to film so we can work on recruitment and all that kind of stuff. And Scott Waugh and Mike McCoy looked at that training for the next 2 years, and they're like, oh my God, what if we write a narrative script around all these training missions? We literally flew around the world twice, right? Making this movie because we were deployed in all these places for these training missions. And I was like, oh my God, that's genius. We write a narrative story around all these things. We involve the SEALs. And now we have something that is very visceral, very immersive, and pretty much, it was the first film that was ever shot on a Canon 5D and put into a movie theater. A lot of people were all fired up about Creator because they used an FX3. It's like, guys, I did that 15 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
And they were like, it went to IMAX theaters. I did that 15 years ago, right? It's like we were in 12 IMAX screens across the country on Active Valor that was in over 9,000 theaters. So that is a massive, undertaking of what we did on a little 1920 by 1080, 25:1 compression.
To that point, now we might take a lot of that for granted, but at the time, you have nothing else to really like maybe go by in terms of just like the practicalities of what it takes to get this into a major Hollywood studio type of movie. Was there like politics or technical challenges? Like, what are the hurdles that you had to come over to say, hey, we are shooting this on a DSLR and it's going to become like this, like, blockbuster type of movie?
Yeah. So every film I look at and it tells you exactly what to do. If you read the script, I have this very unique 9-read process. And I'm actually releasing a book in the fall on this specific process.
Oh, amazing.
And the script tells you everything to do. And the limitations also that come along with the script educate your vision. With Active Valor, we were told that we could go on all these training missions for 2 years. We were given billions of dollars of access to hardware. I'm flying in Ospreys. I'm in nuclear subs under the damn Atlantic. I am being, flown with Night Stalker helicopters, fast roping down into these Swick boats, they call them. We had miniguns. We have live fire. Live fire had never been done since 1921, right? The Navy said you can have access to all this, but you can't have more than 10 people. So immediately the story on how I wanted to go in, take you as a viewer inside the eyes of what it's like to experience a mission with the Navy SEALs and how they move. It's like a ballet. And I was like, if I have this massive camera on them, there's no way you're going to get that ballet. No way you're going to track those movements where he's looking down and coming across and, giving the go ahead and all these hand signals and all that stuff. So it told me to use something super small. There was nothing film wise that was like that. And the digital cameras were so massive that was limiting. And if we used film, there was no way we could do it with a 7 or 10 person crew. No way. Impossible. Yeah. Right. So I just happened to go to this wine and cheese function at Sammy's Camera that the ASC was putting on. And I walked up to the 4th floor and there was a model there. And I put that Canon 5D in my hand and I saw for the first time depth of field like a 35 millimeter camera. And I was like, this is the tool that we're going to tell that story. Now, technically, you don't go from Terminator Salvation, $200 million to basically the lowest budget independent blockbuster film ever. It's like we were doing it for under $4 million. Right.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times, the producers and the directors were putting it on their credit cards and, just trying to, self-fund this whole thing because we knew the vision was strong and we knew we had a story to tell that was absolutely unique. But with that comes completely reinventing the way you make movies with that device, right? Because it's not a cinema camera. It was a still camera that just had a video enabled device on the sensor. Okay. Canon had no idea what this was going to do. And by enabling that, they were not prepared. You have built something absolutely incredible. Let's throw gasoline on this and let's engineer this together. So with that came my launch of the blog. And the blog was, a genesis of my wife seeing all this, kind of trailblazing with taking a DSLR and declicking the lenses and putting these weird zip gears and enabling all the professional stuff from the cinema world and Hollywood that I've used and then putting it on this camera. So I made Panavision mounts, right? I was not going to use Canon lenses and the still glass. I wanted to give my focus pullers a chance in hell to be able to, pull focus in all this, right? So I Panavized all my Canon cameras. Then I used all Preston follow focus. So my focus pullers were used to what they had. I engineered all the Cine tape, to be able to be integrated within the camera. So they could use all the tools that they had used in the past for 30 years now, but with a digital sensor, right? So spearheading that and customizing it and creating it was a technological juggernaut. Because we had to get the balance right on the shoulder rigs. We had to engineer helmet cameras that could affix to the helmets and didn't jiggle and didn't move weirdly. We had to be able to rack focus with them because if somebody came up close, I had to be able to rack focus like your eyes would do,
Right.
When the seals were integrating and relating with each other. So a lot of innovation came out of that. And it was, one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career because it was not only taking a completely untested camera system to the market on 9,000 screen release, it was also finding out with the blog that we launched based on just wanting to share everything that I was doing. I wanted to share it with everyone. Right? Because this was so innovative and so unique. And this was going to be a disruptor. This is the kind of disruptive technology that changes the industry. So I wanted to talk about it and I wanted to create a sharing of knowledge all over the world. And that's exactly what happened. Some guy in Switzerland all of a sudden, hits the blog and says, "Hey, did you happen to notice that when you put your Canon camera at 160, 320, and 640, the noise floor is reduced extremely? It's clean, but if you use anything in between, you get fixed pattern noise?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I looked at it, I'm like, "Oh my God, yes." There were all these things that you needed to turn off on the camera to make it really good cinematically. If you left all those things that were the holdover from the still world, then it would make your image not as good. And Magic Lantern came out with all these hacks and everything. And those were a diabolical disaster. I created my own picture profiles. I went in, I manipulated the image. I took the sharpness away. I, made everything kind of neutral and really well balanced. So it gave us the most latitude in color correction. Technicolor came out with that weird kind of flat thing that I can't remember what the hell they called it. I tried it, and it basically took my ability to have a color range and literally destroyed it because it made it so flat that it took all my color depth out of the image. So no, and this is all this process of like, oh, the magic lantern came out while we were shooting. Okay, let's try this, because we set a plan in place, a neutral, all this thing, engineered the camera, all the specifics, downloading the footage, I did a whole class on this for B&H of everything I had learned. It was called like DSLR filmmaking or something. And that thing went ballistic, right? Because everyone was just chomping at the bit for knowledge, because they wanted to make movies and they wanted to tell their stories, but they didn't really know how to do it in a cinematic way. And that was where the blog started, the whole education thing started, as well as while I was literally trailblazing a whole, movie making platform and try to professionalize it.
And it's really cool to hear that. I didn't realize it actually until you just said it, where kind of your entry point with the digital revolution and also your blogging and educational stuff kind of happened simultaneously. Yeah, I thought that might have happened much later.
Exactly. I wanted to talk about it. And that was, Lydia and I were down in Puerto Rico, and we were literally sitting in bed together. We were shooting in Puerto Rico. We were down there for like 3-4 weeks shooting Active Valor. And we found this amazing location. And I, as being the travel coordinator, I booked this incredible hotel. So we were staying at it. We had a lap pool. We were right on the lee side of the island. It was epic, right? And she goes, you're doing a lot of really cool, innovative stuff like this. Why don't we start to share this knowledge? And I was like, well, how do I do that? And he goes, we're going to start a blog, and we're going to brand Hurlbut Visuals, the Hurl blog, and we're going to start the conversation. And once we started that conversation, as much as I shared, I got twice back in return. Wow. And that was the spark. What if I could educate when I'm literally spearheading technology and at the top of my game? What if I educate then? How is that going to change the landscape?
It's interesting you say, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, but that as much as you gave, you got twice in return, because I think everything that maybe society or just your own fears will tell you is that, like, oh, if I give it away, then I lose my upper edge, or like the siloed information is why people are paying me, or my expertise, or whatever it might be. How did you come over that? Did you feel any of that, like when you started, or was it right from the get-go when your wife talked about it? It's like, no, I really do want to like educate just as much as like I am like working and doing what I do best.
When I bounced this idea around a lot of my peers, they told me, don't do it. Everyone, don't do it. Don't share. Don't this. This is unbelievable what you're doing. Make it your own. Don't share this knowledge. Don't expand anyone's else's creativity. This is what you develop. This is what you design. This is yours. Okay. That is not the way we're in a shift right now. We are all about inclusivity. We're about, expanding everyone's knowledge. We're about sharing knowledge. We're about moving forward, not siloing, not gatekeeping. And this was Lydia's thing. She goes, let's just share it and let's see what happens. And sure enough, all her instincts were right. I know that I will look back at my career. I will look at the lives that I literally shaped and that we changed together as an entity, my wife, myself, and my whole team. We're going to look back at that is our legacy. The in the trenches, sharing the knowledge, getting feedback, helping others expand their creativity and shape their stories in ways that they never thought. And you unlock that aha moment for them, that changes their lives. It changes their whole family's lives. It changes their whole paycheck that's coming in. I mean, the stories that flow in from Filmmakers Academy are awe-inspiring. Where one guy in Nigeria took my beginner cinematography career path. He leveraged that in Nigeria and formed a school off of just that one career path. He educated 2,000 female filmmakers. They created this whole film festival, and these women were crushing it. They were, their lives, their stories were so unique. And this is one instance of thousands. And that is a legacy to stand on and to look back at and say, you know what? No matter what movie I shot, no matter what story I told, whatever relationship I had, sharing the knowledge, not gatekeeping it, giving with your heart. And this is something that has been so profound for me, is like opening up myself to all these filmmakers that are like sponges and just want to learn. And I've given them a platform to do that. We've given them this platform to land on, to expand their creativity, to learn the technical with the theoretical, the practical with the creative vision. All these things are all there and continue to grow and continue to expand.
That's incredible. And kudos to you. I mean, I'm sure those are just the stories that you know about, but I'm sure there's countless stories that haven't messaged in,
Right.
and I even have to share in that, just because there's a handful of people that really did propel this revolution that got me into filmmaking, even though I haven't taken a course. Just the idea of that, like that this type of innovation succeeded, because it could have been blocked at any point to.
Yes.
Like if somebody was a purist, or the industry in general kind of just decided to stay film, or decided to stay a type of camera or whatever it might be, I think a lot of us wouldn't be able to do what we're doing today even. So I look back at that a lot. Like if certain technical innovations didn't happen, or if trailblazers didn't actually decide to use it first, it wouldn't have gotten to the place where now all of us can kind of partake in that. So
yeah, I mean, I remember being at an event. I was speaking event in Toronto, and somebody came up to me and he handed me the Act of Valor DVD, and he said, "Could you sign this?" And I said, "Oh, that'd be great." So I signed it. He goes, "You understand that you have expanded my whole career, because before I was just a shooter, but now I can have a production company and I can create all these commercials and short films and stuff. And when the agency comes to me and says, 'Why do you want to do it on a Canon 5D?' I just hand them the signed Act of Valor DVD and said, 'Okay, so your commercial is better than Act of Valor that was in 9,000 movie theaters across the country. And you're telling me that this sensor is not powerful enough for your commercial.'"
Right.
And that was, and I started to hear the story one after another. It started to enable this revolution where when people were given, "Oh, you need to shoot it on film, or you need to shoot it on the Alexa," I got this camera and we can do unique things with it. And I have studied under, Shane, and we've done everything that he did on Act of Valor. Is that not good enough? And it started to be the calling card for all these, director photographies and director cameramans that wanted to tell their stories. And so like regional markets and branded content and all this stuff started to explode.
Can we maybe take it back a little bit to, I'd love to hear like early journey and how you even got to, call it, mega blockbuster Hollywood films. Obviously, nobody just starts there. What was your journey like into doing actual like films?
I grew up in a small town, Aurora, New York, which is like on the banks of Cayuga Lake and the Finger Lake region of upstate New York. It's actually Ithaca, which was 26 miles south of us, was kind of the original Hollywood for silent pictures. And that's where that really started. Kodak was, 55 miles away, where in Rochester, New York. So all the film processing and film stock was there. There was a guy named Case from Auburn, New York, which is 15 minutes to north of us, that literally came up with the sound recording film. So he was like a IR kind of scientist on the boats in the Navy in World War I. And he started the IR communication from boat, ship to ship, because there was no, walkie-talkies or any kind of radio communication. And he then took that back and created the film strip for a sound recording film. And then the talkies exploded, right? Mm-hmm. So that all happened in this little area that I grew up in. And wow. I thought I was going to be a DJ, right? I did the morning announcements. I was huge into sports. I played, baseball, basketball, tennis, golf, soccer. I played semi-pro soccer for the Buffalo Stallions. I was, kind of a jock, let's say, that had kind of a good voice. So I was like, all right, I'll be on radio. So I went to a small little school, Herkimer County Community College. It was only like 2.5, 3 hours from my hometown. And I grew up lower middle class. My mom was a 6th grade school teacher and did like catering jobs on the side, and also was like the head of the teachers union. My dad was a professor's assistant at Cornell. And then we had like a 350 acre farm that we farmed together. So I wanted to make sure that they were willing to support me and not just crush me with debt. With school loans and everything. So I said, all right, let me go to a cheap community college to see if this is what I want to do. Because I didn't want to go to like some huge expensive school and then realize that that wasn't what I loved, right? I wanted to be responsible. And this is me at 18 talking, which I don't see my son thinking about those things now. So I went to the small college. The first year was radio, loved it, was the program director, was a DJ, all that stuff. Then the next year was television. I started to fall in love with TV. Now that summer that I graduated, and then I graduated #1 in the class, all that stuff, and ended up getting this massive scholarship to go wherever I wanted to go. And of course, I only think emotionally. It's like a lot of times I jump off a cliff without a parachute and I'm like, all right, I'll just figure out how I'm going to make it and land safely. Right. So I remember when I got that scholarship, I walked right into my guidance counselor and he goes, all right, Shane, we have an open checkbook here, because it was like $15,000 a year. And in 1984, that was a lot of money. Right. Yeah. Harvard was only $21,000 a year at that time. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I said, you know what? He goes, where do you want to go? The world is your oyster. And I said, Boston. And he goes, why Boston? I said, because my future wife is in Boston right now, and I am going there for her. I didn't care whether the school was any good. I just wanted to be in Boston because I was in love with her, and that was my main goal. Now, Emerson College that I ended up going to was an amazing experience for me. because I went from a very small town of 500 people and was jet setted into a massive urban environment where the sidewalk was our campus at Emerson. We had no campus green. We had no gazebo, none of that. It was literally Beacon Street, the sidewalk. And that really opened up my eyes to so much more creatively and inspirationally. And sure enough, Lydia and I stayed together. We continued to build on our relationship. And when I got out of school, she still had 1 year at Simmons. She went to Simmons for nursing. And out of that, I decided to pound the pavement in Boston and get a job, because out of film school, I hated director of photography. I hated lighting. I didn't much like directing. I thought I was going to be a producer because I knew I could get people fired up about an idea, and I could, and I was really good with money and trying to departmentalize it and bring it to life. So my mom bought me a 3-piece suit, and I pounded my pavement in Boston, walking from production company to production company with whoosh, every door just slammed in my face, and it was going nowhere. So I went back to the place that I had interned at, which was this company called Film Arts. And they were like a small little rental house in Boston. And I had done, grip and rental there, grip and electric, and some camera. They had grip electric camera, and they also had a little post-production facility. So I was like, all right, I'll go back there. So sure enough, $3.50 an hour, packing grip trucks. Within 3 months, I was running the whole rental division. Within 6 months, I was going out and driving all the grip trucks and starting to get my on-set experience. And that's where the love of being a director of photography really started to expand. I started to love grip work because grip was very much like the farm, right? We were constantly cob jobbing things and welding things and building things out of nothing. And that common sense kind of genius was something that I immediately applied to gripping. So I, flew up the ladder from, working at this rental house to then Lydia and I saying, you know what? I realized within the first year, the only way I was going to move up in Boston was if the person above me died, right? Because it was so restricted, right? It was so seniority based. So I was like, Lydia, we got to go out to Hollywood. That's where we can really start our life. So we did. We moved out to Hollywood. One of my good friends that went to USC from my high school found us a place. We moved in right next to him in Glendale, and he got us this apartment, and we worked out all the deals, and that's how I literally started my career. Now, did I go right into making movies? No. I started right back at the bottom again. I'd been working on Spencer for Hire and all these music videos and all this stuff. But then, and this is part of building yourself as a filmmaker in general. This is the humbling process. And the humbling process is so important. Because I find that there's so many people that have this arrogance about them, and, everything they do is just, incredible, and they're genius, and they're this, that, and the other thing. Well, I am very humble because I continued to have to restart my career over and over and over again. And that was my journey. And it's kept me incredibly humble. So sure enough, I go right back. Now I'm making $5 an hour instead of $3.50 when I started out, but I'm packing grip trucks again. And this defining moment happened. And what I want all the listeners to realize is every choice you make to do something has a massive ripple effect. And when people tell you to do something specific and you might not think that's the right way, It's okay. Bend it, break it, because those rules that people put on you are only to stifle you and only to keep you exactly where you are. So when I started working at this rental house, it was Keylight.
It was in LA.
It was in LA. It was the largest rental house in the world at the time.
Wow.
But I worked there, and everyone, when I got there, everyone was saying, Shane, you don't run, you just move, you just get your quota done for the day and you check out. That's all you do. And I was like, well, how the hell am I going to get ahead when I just, do what everyone else is doing? There was a producer in the with one of the rental agents. And there was a big window in his office that looked down on the huge parking lot that had where all the 5-ton and 10-ton trucks load. And the guy's looking out the window and he goes, who is that guy? And I'm like literally running stuff back and forth. I'm running 4x, I'm running carts, I'm running all this stuff back and forth. And the guy goes, oh, that's this crazy guy that just came in from Boston. He just runs circles around everyone. He's so passionate and so inspired. I don't know what his deal is, but he's like an Energizer bunny. After that, the person walked out and said, hey, I'm Roberto. I have a movie, and I was wondering if you would like to be my truck driver, my grip truck driver on it. And I was like, well, yeah, that sounds amazing. So I was like all excited. I went home and I told Lydia, and we were like, oh my God, I got this opportunity to work on. And the movie was Phantasm 2. This summer, the ball is back, right? And it was like a huge classic, B movie horror film. Phantasm was like a cult following. And this was the follow-up, right? 10 days later, the rental agent came to me and said, oh, by the way, the company, the production company went with Lee America. And so they're not going to be doing the movie with us. And it's just like, that break. I thought I had it, right? And then all of a sudden the producer called me and said, hey, he goes, I know we didn't make the deal with Keylight. Lee America beat the bid, but I wanted to see if you would drive for Lee America. But that means you have to leave your job at Keylight.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay. And obviously I just landed in LA. Lydia and I are trying to make ends meet. She's got a really good job at Children's Hospital, but it's really, it's expensive compared to where we came from, right? So we're just trying to, I remember we were going to Hughes Market at the time, which then turned into Ralph's. And I remember, bringing our, change, jar, because, and being in line and realizing that we didn't have enough money and we had to put all this stuff back that we could not afford. And everyone in line is looking all pissed off and all that kind of stuff. This was how I started out. This was not the silver spoon in the mouth. There was none of that stuff. This is boots on the ground in the trenches, trying to make it as a filmmaker in Hollywood, right? And with that, I, said yes. I left Keylight. I started driving for Lee America, and that launched my career. So I became the grip truck driver. And then this is where I say to all the audience listening out there, these are the aha moments that you do not overlook. Hey, Shane. Yeah, Terry. Yeah, I need an 18x24. Run in, stat to the crematorium set. Copy. Right? So I am on the grip truck. I grab the flag and I'm running it through the set, and I walk down the stairs. And on the way up, Brian Coyne, who was a graduate of USC's cinematography program, was the third electric. Okay. And he stops me on the stairs and he goes, would you be scared And I go, Brian, what are you talking about? I got to run this flag into Terry. He's going to yell at me if I don't get it to him soon. He goes, no, look at the set. Every nook and cranny is lit. There is no shadow. Where's the suspense? And it was like, boom. That was like a light bulb going off. And everything from that point, I looked at light. Everything. Every light, I walked into my apartment and looked at the light on how it raced through the window or how twilight looked and everything was a light learning experience. And I went from a grip truck driver on a B horror movie in 1988 to shooting my first music video in 1991 for Nirvana, Come As You Are. So literally in 3 years, I was able to make that big shift. And that was the catalyst. I started to do music videos, starting to do commercials. And then out of doing one music video for Donna Summer, which was for the film Daylight. Remember Daylight with Sylvester Stallone? It's where the Holland Tunnel floods and he's got to rescue all these people. Well, Rob Cohen was directing that movie, and he sent his producing team down to the set to make sure that Randy St. Nicholas, who was the female director at the time, I'd done like 30, 40 music videos with her, that Donna Summer was being taken care of, and that the set was a really cool environment and all that stuff. Well, supposedly they came back to Rob Cohen and they go, I just want to tell you, I walked on that set and I have never seen a DP command the set like this individual. He was moving the cameras and using unique lenses that I have never seen before in my life. 10 days later, I got a call. I got brought into his production office at Universal Studios in the Hitchcock office that he had. And he goes, Shane, I have a movie called The Rat Pack, and I would love for you to interview for it. And I went into that interview. I went in with full guns blazing. I had never really interviewed for a feature before. So of course I called up my peers and they said, well, go in and ask a lot of questions, which was great. But, ask the questions that, how does the director want to do it? And how do they want to do it? And how do they want to do this? And how they want to do that? And I go, oh, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't sound right. Because if I want to be on this movie for 6 months, be on this project, it's something that I need to be invested in. I need to be a collaborator. So I pulled all these reference books and brought them in my ARRI mag canvas bag and, sat in his office. And I said, I was curious in regards to, hey, Rob, what are you thinking for the vision for this thing? Da, 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 da. And then I was like, this is how we're going to shoot this movie. And I started pulling up all these references and all this stuff because I felt if I don't have a point of view, if I do not share what's in my head, we're interviewing each other. As much as he's interviewing me, I'm interviewing him or her, right? So I can immediately find if they're going to be a collaborator or if I'm just going to be somebody that just does whatever they want. And that is not the filmmaker that I really wanted to be. I wanted to be a collaborator. I had creative ideas. I had unique stories to tell, and I wanted to be a part of that process. And with that, Rob Cohen was like, well, I've never had anyone bring reference books into a meeting before. Show me what you got here. And I put, it's actually, you can see the book. See that face there? That's Hurrell Hollywood. Okay. That is the book that launched my career. Because I brought that book in and my concept was that the Rat Pack was amazing on stage, but their life was being on stage. So from the stage to their life, there was no difference. They had the perfect key light, the perfect backlight, the perfect fill light. They all felt like even though they were off stage, they were still on stage. And we lit it in this high key kind of Hurrell 1930s, 40s environment. And it was a massive success. And with that kind of launched my career. HBO started having me shoot all their promos for all their shows. I was flown all over the world to do that. Feature work. Rob Cohen took me on to his next film, The Skulls. And that was my first studio feature. Before was an HBO, made for TV movie, I guess you would call it. And this was my first theatrical release. And it just started snowballing from there.
And how old were you at the time? Because I think I read that you were like the youngest ASC member at the time. I don't know if that's still true, but
yeah, I don't know if it's still true now. Yes, I was the youngest and the youngest to ever be nominated.
Wow.
On their first film. So it's like there was a lot of unique points to that. It was like the youngest, then on his first film, and an ASC nomination.
And how old were you at that time?
I think I was 34.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because usually when you think of, I guess, like ASC or cinematographers, you're thinking of like 50, 60-year-old, like white-haired, like, I'm sure like men, like, so I'm sure that was a big deal for you to come in at 34 and to get some of those accolades, which is so impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and the ASC was so supportive. And I remember a conversation with Bob Primes. He goes, Shane, what you did on this, he goes, the defining moment that we all in the room when we were, and he goes, I'm sharing this with you because, we're not supposed to talk about this, but I just want to tell you, the defining moment is when you put Don Cheadle in the white room, in that hotel with the white TV, with the white flowers, with the white walls, with the white bed sheets. And that defining image was what we said, we are nominating you. And I was like, whoa. And that was, a very strong image. And what it said in the movie was massive, right? It was the whole thing of the civil rights movement. And here is Sammy Davis Jr. in this white world, but a black guy, right? And it was so powerful. And this was Rob Cohen's vision from the beginning. He goes, this will be the defining key frame for the whole film. And I remember being at this crazy hotel that they've now demolished, but it was in Mid-Wilshire District. It was like where the Coco Cabana was, the Coconut Grove. I can't remember what the hotel was, but we were up in this very limiting room. It was very small, very massive constraints, shooting on 35 millimeter film. And I had to overexpose the image so it looked like it was a nuclear reactor glowing. And it was so hot in there. Oh my God, Don Cheadle was literally sweating bullets in bed. I remember he comes up to me, he goes, Shane, this damn image better be powerful. I'm going to kick your ass. And sure enough, he saw it at the premiere and he goes, okay, the sweat was worth it.
That's amazing. I don't know if you've seen that article recently that came out about how 71% of film budgets go over budget. It's crazy to think that this has become like a standard in the industry and you just kind of have to keep going with it. I don't know if you've heard of saturation, but saturation is the next gen budgeting tool that you can use to streamline all of your operations and your budgets and your finances on a project. It gives you really easy collaborative tools and you're able to bring in your budgets and your actuals and your expenses all in one place. If you haven't tried it yet, go to saturation.io, sign up for a free account. It's really easy and quick to sign up. You were kind of just at that point like a studio kind of DP. Were you doing other stuff at the time as well? Or
Yeah, I was jumping in between commercials, still shooting music videos.
still doing all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So once I got out of features, I went right back to it. But there was another moment. So let's digress just a little bit. On Drumline, I had another one of those aha moments. Okay. And these are, I want to share these with people because this is what defines you as an artist, right? And if you don't take a moment to see it as that defining moment, it's lost.
Yeah.
And trust me, it's never coming back. It's just not. It's lightning in a bottle, and you have to harness it and bury it in your heart. So on Drumline, I had gone back to my lucrative career of shooting commercials and directing. So I was a director cameraman, and it was working out really great. You know, I was waiting for the next feature to come in. And I got this script sent to me while I was in Kansas City shooting a children's hospital commercial. And I read the first 10 pages and I was like, what the hell is this? I don't see this at all. And all of a sudden I got a call while I was on set, right? So I'm lensing up a shot with this kid that had just been cured with cancer, had no, hair. All of it had been shaved off, in a wheelchair. It was a very, very emotional moment. And I really wanted to make sure I captured this. But, like everything, we always have to be on the ready. When the cell phone rings, you pick it up, right?
Yeah.
So I saw that it was Tim Bourne, which was the producer on Drumline. And he goes, hey, Shane, this is Tim Bourne. And I go, hey, Tim, how you doing? What are you up to? And I go, sorry, I'm on this children's hospital spot. I'm about ready to do this shot. How can I help you? And he goes, I just wanted to see, if you'd read the script and, what your thoughts are. And I was like, Tim, I don't really understand this whole Saints Go Marching In, drum line, I don't know how to tell this story.
Right.
And all of a sudden, his tone turned to aggressive. And it was like, whoa. He goes, where are you? And I said, well, I'm in Kansas City, shooting this. Where are you staying? It's okay. I'm trying to pull up my itinerary. I'm staying at the Hilton. This is my address. This is my room. Okay. Boo, hangs up. I'm like, what the hell was that? Right. And now I have to move right into this emotional moment. I'm like still kind of spinning. And I'm like, okay, all right, we're going to, have the camera is going to push by you. And as you go by, I'd love for you to smile and look up at your mom. And I'm going to boom up to your mom and she's going to have that smile. And then we rack focus to the children's hospital logo. It's going to be awesome. Day goes by. And I walk into my hotel room after an exhausting 14-hour day. And this was like the scene in The Ring. Remember that? Where you walk in and there's a glowing TV? Well, back in the day, right, there's no digital file. There's nothing you can download on your computer. They literally rolled the AV card into my room. The TV was on with static. The VCR was down on the second shelf, and there was literally a VCR in it that said, play me. And I was like, what the hell is this? I pushed the thing in. The thing comes to life. And all of a sudden, I saw the Senate, who was the A&T Drumline, just going off. And the cadence and the music and the artistry, and I was literally running for the phone, right? And I was like, I grabbed my cell phone and I'm like, hey, Tim, how are you? And he goes, whoa, saw the video, huh? And I was like, this is insane. I want to shoot this. Oh, you do now. What about the Saints Go Marching In? And I was like, no, this is incredible. Boom. It was like everything was about in just immersing myself in that subculture. I went to all these events. I went to all the drum lines, the drum battles at halftime. I went to USCs to see how they did it. I went to all the Southern show style ones. I just was immersing myself in that. And sure enough, 4 weeks later, I was on, prepping with Charles Stone III, Drumline. And that really started to cement my style, the way I was lensing, the way I was telling stories. And that was a monstrous hit. It just catapulted me. And, still to this day, people talk to me like that movie is a classic because, and so many people come up to me and they said, you started me as a musician. And full circle, Rudy Mancuso, which was the director, writer, actor, and composer of Musica that I just shot in 2022 with him. He said Drumline was the reason he became a musician. And it was like, you can see this is lightning in a bottle that you capture. You find, and it was Tim Bourne that was that spark, that he had the knowledge and the ingenuity to do exactly that.
You can never predict, I guess, like how it'll affect people, like from watching a movie. So that's profound. It seems like there's this trend in what you've been talking about, in at least being able to like pin those aha moments, and you seem to be very good at like knowing that why you are here today is because of these very distinct points in time that have kind of led to these building blocks to do all of what you're doing today. So it's really, I think it's such a great thing for anybody to like be self-reflective about being able to know that.
Yeah. In the day and age that we're in this AI, everything is happening so fast. What we thought was 5 years is going to be 5 months. What we thought 5 months is going to be 5 weeks. What we thought 5 weeks is going to be 5 days. That's all going to be this. Everything is happening so fast. You got to realize you got to just slow down every once in a while and take these lightning in the bottle moments and know and capitalize on them and grab them, because the world's moving so fast. And, what's that Ferris Bueller line? I remember going to see it, and that became my anthem, because the world moves fast. If you don't get on that train, you're going to miss it, or something like that, And that's exactly what these moments in my career were. And, it's like Act of Valor and Terminator Salvation. After Terminator Salvation, I was really kind of disenfranchised with the whole blockbuster experience, actually. I went from shooting, I think my biggest movie at the time was like 50 or 60 million, and then it went to 200 million. So I was disenfranchised with, how much the producers were taking and how much I actually had to make the movie and all that stuff. So Act of Valor was actually a rebirth for me. It was a rebirth for loving why I became a filmmaker. And I wanted to go back to my roots of, doing kind of a lot of, a Swiss Army knife, being able to morph myself into a director of photography, a camera operator, a gaffer, a key grip, and a travel coordinator, right? And also a lot of the really helping Scott Waugh and Mouse McCoy, who were stuntmen prior to this point, actually, help them to tell a very compelling, moving movie, even though it was, the Navy SEAL and it was action based, but to really have the heart of the story about what these warriors go through and their mindset and how they have 5 and 6 and 8 kids. It's like, how do you do this and, get deployed and are away from your family and come back and all this stuff, so I wanted to really tell that, again, telling it from the heart, really finding the heart of that story and that message, that these warriors are risking their life. They're doing everything to defend our way of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it rooted me, and it gave me a whole new kind of spark and creativity. And that's what launched the DSLR revolution. That's what launched the blog. That's what launched the education. That's what launched my whole second act in making movies.
I know we're kind of getting short on time here. I'm curious, what is your hot take on where the industry is heading with, like you're saying, like you've seen innovation and just the technological revolutions that have happened in the industry. And I'm sure each one has kind of half-lifed and gotten faster and faster. And as you mentioned, like even with now AI, it's kind of what we thought would be years is now months, if not weeks, of new things coming out. Where are we headed as an industry in terms of like making or creating art and with technology? Do you have like a hot take of where we're headed?
Yeah, I do, and it's a great one, actually. And I think this is going to propel so much more new creative growth. So the retention that we're seeing now is going to be an explosion that's going to start to happen in the fall and winter. I'm already starting to see it. And it's not going to be like 0 to 100. It's still going to crawl, walk, run, because you can't just all of a sudden turn the floodgates on. It just can't happen that way. It's going to be a sprinkling, a spattering, and then all of a sudden it's going to crawl. Then it's going to walk. Then we're going to be running. And for all creatives out there and technicians that have given me their absolute excellence on set day in and day out, have made me shine, have made me laugh, and have inspired me to do unique ideas and everything. Trust me, we got to just hold out for this. It's all coming. I've seen it with the conversations that I've had with Mick G's studio, Wonderland, and the executive producers over there. It's all starting to wind up. And I see AI having a efficiency focus. I think that the studios are trying to use tools like saturation, which is an AI-enabled budgeting platform that really is able to track it in ways that the human mind cannot. It's like I see, as a filmmaker, I am looking to enable ways like saturation. I'm enabling ways like Blackmagic Cloud and Blackmagic to enable a post-production workflow that is not on Avid, which we've done for 3 to 4 decades. It's on a system that's end to end, where every creative in the process actually can see what's going on. Oh, what a concept, right? It's like never before has there been a platform that unites all the creative engines to fuel it. It's not an export from the Avid. It's not an export from VFX. It's a this, it's a that. Then we gotta, put it into and wrap it in a package. In DaVinci, you hit a button. You can't do that with Avid. You can't do that with the VFX pipeline. You can't do that with audio. DaVinci has created this one platform that's end to end, where you can literally ingest the footage that tracks all the metadata that every person, the color corrector, the editor, the director, the audio, the VFX can all look at it. This is a shout out to all creatives that we need to start to adjust, and we start to need to change the way we work.
It's so well said, especially with what we're talking about is that AI is introducing the human efficiency problem.
Yes.
And if we don't properly utilize that so that everything is in front of camera or full into the creativity and get rid of kind of the fat that exists within creating, I think that's really the way that us as humans are going to have to adapt or not, and then be left behind.
Right.
And
Just get out of the business, find something else to do.
Exactly.
It's like, because I think that, the world's moving fast and we have to be a part of it. And, a lot of the tools are not ready. It's like everyone's like, we can make everything in Runway and in Google and in Adobe. And so I try all those things. So I did a perfect example. I am slotted to do this TV series. So I said, okay, I'm going to take this action sequence, which is very much, I'm kind of inspiring it from Michael Mann's The Heat, right? Remember that gun battle at the end? It's just relenting, right?
Yeah.
Well, this has that as the climax of episode 1. So I do this whole precursor. So I did a 7 to 10 scene breakdown of shot listing. And then I fed it into every AI tool. I spent over $1,000 getting Runway, getting this, getting that, getting all these things. And my son, who is a whiz bang, technological juggernaut, goes, all right, Dad, we're doing this, right? Simple first shot. Start out in the sky with beautiful puffy clouds, start to boom down on a crane where we see the lines of palm trees. We land on a residential street in Beverly Hills where we come on a police officer that pulls over with his lights flashing, and we boom down into a low heroic angle where he calls in the license plate. We don't see the car yet or anything. Now he calls it in. He gets off of his bike, sets the kickstand. We wrap around him. We go around and we start to slide down the car. We see him touch the taillight that was out, which was the whole reason he's pulling the person over. We land in an over the shoulder of the police officer to the window. The window comes down, power window down, and all this cannabis smoke comes out of the thing and a muzzle flash. That's the opener. Okay. 7 different tools couldn't generate this thing. It was having the cop shoot him out of his finger. We couldn't get anything to. So this is where I can honestly say, creatively, we use tools of emotion, of vulnerability, of compassion, of unseen things that spark a feeling, an emotion. That is never going to be in AI. I at least in the near future, until Skynet takes over us and we all are running from as the resistance. But it's like, that is something, the human element of mistakes, of failure. AI doesn't like failure, but it fails a lot. It took 3 to 6 to 10,000 prompts to get one image that was not perfect, right? We're at a learning curve.
It's definitely the genesis of it. And
I think that, I don't look at this as negative at all. I look at us continuing to have to create the vulnerability, the unseen, so the audience feels it. They don't necessarily know why they're feeling it, but they feel it. That is so much in between the lines. We make mistakes. We fail. We pick ourselves up. We start over again. That is the human element. And that's where our creativity is, where it stems from.
Well, that seems like a great place to kind of to land this plane, with the human side of things, and that there's hope for humanity there. Shane, I really appreciate the time that you've given us today. There were so many gold nuggets in that. Can you tell us where people can find you and maybe plug some of the things that you're doing currently?
Yeah, sure. You can follow me, Shane Hurlbut, ASC, on Instagram. You can follow us on Filmmakers Academy, also on Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, Filmmakers Academy. We have an amazing filmmaking resource for filmmakers. I consider it the Encyclopedia Britannica, but in video form for filmmakers. It's like everything that you need to know, the practical, the theoretical, the scientific, the technical mixed with the creative. It's all there on a platform. It's kind of something that you should keep with your whole life as a filmmaker. I started out in the industry and there was nothing like this resource. I had mentors that taught me some of the great ways to be a cinematographer and also some of the bad ways. But this is, when I stood back and Lydia and I created this platform, it was what I had hoped would have been there when I first started out. So I could really see the industry as the world is my oyster and see where I could put myself in it. So this is life from film school, or you saying, I want to be a filmmaker, and you have this massive gorge and you have to rappel down this side and weather across the Colorado River and be swept down the river and then, swim your ass back and then climb and claw all the way up to getting on set. We create a bridge that literally sits there and you hop, skip, and jump across the son of a right into success. There's not many platforms that can make you set ready, teaches you the brick and mortar of the film language, the film set environment.
Well, be sure to check out those resources. We'll link it down in the show notes as well. Shane, again, thank you so much. A real honor and a pleasure. And I hope we get to do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jed.
Thanks for tuning in to Produced With. You can find more episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Produced With is brought to you by Saturation. If you're a filmmaker, check out saturation.io, the all-in-one production budgeting, payments, and actualization tool. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show, leave us a review, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. Special thanks to our producer Eugene Wade and editor Stephen Gray for helping shape the conversation and making it sound as good as it does. And hey, check out the show notes. Join the community and find us online.